You're watching Parker Success Academy Clinical Rounds with Dr. William E. Morgan.
Hello, I'm Dr. William E. Morgan, and this is Clinical Rounds, where we discuss topics of clinical relevance. Today I have a very special guest, Dr. Kathryn Hartlieb. Dr. Hartlieb, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So we've met before. We've had another interview where we discussed motivational interviewing, but today we'd like to talk about the topic of childhood obesity. So it's a topic I think you have great interest in. Can you tell us a little bit about the problem we're facing today?
Well, right now there's a lot of elevated weight happening regardless of age across the world, and in particularly in the United States. So talking to patients about weight and weight in their family and being healthy is something that is coming up a lot from providers that we talk to.
And there's a lot of health concerns, from the effects on brain function and cognitive output, to cardiovascular, to premature diabetes. So I think we all agree there's a problem there. We can see it, and for somebody who grew up in the 60s, you can see the pictures of people in the 60s compared to now. It's remarkable how large people have become. It's probably one of the number one health problems in the Western world today, and it's getting worse. What are some steps that you would recommend to our clinicians to help combat this malady?
Well, I think that there are a lot of wonderful resources and guidelines out that are available by some really smart organizations and smart researchers. And I would encourage people to just take a read through some of those. I know that the Endocrine Society and the Obesity Society have published some clinical guidelines that are very specific and they're very useful. So I think that those are, on the one hand, things that talk about like the what we can talk to people about. But I know that one thing that I have a lot of interest in is helping providers in the how they're talking about it, and inviting them to feel a lot more comfortable bringing up the topic and supporting children and families with that change.
And it's a tough topic in that obesity, if I'm not mistaken, is a social contagion. That if your friends are overweight, you're much more likely to be overweight. If your parents are overweight, you're much more likely to be overweight. So it's not like addressing the problem of a singular person. You're addressing their whole social structure. And how do you go about that? How do you even begin?
Yeah. Well, I think that it is really recognizing that the individual does need to be interested in approaching that and taking that on, because you're right, it can be really large to think about making some of these changes. But inviting the individual to think about their health and how their weight fits into that, and then guiding them with the many, many options that are possible. Because as you said, there's the individual factors that somebody could be working on, perhaps their own small activities, but also how they're interacting with the world around them, and maybe how they're walking home from school. Are they walking by certain social factors that would influence more of elevated weight behaviors, or can they take a different way that helps to decrease those risk factors for them?
And we know that simply by preparing meals at home, you're much more likely to have lower calorie meals and better, more healthy meals. So I would imagine trying to encourage families that are, of course, the pushback you get, we're really busy, we're both working. By the time we pick up our kids, we swing by McDonald's, and they always want fries and a Happy Meal. How could you initiate a change there? Because that's actually a real thing, and any practitioner who's been around for more than a couple months has had that exact scenario pop into their office.
Well, you bring up this idea that we are not asking oftentimes the youth to make changes right away. We're often talking to the caregiver, their parent, and whoever might be in the room with them that is seeking care. And so I think something that can help is to start bringing the youth into the conversation, inviting them to say, well, what would it be like if we ordered the applesauce instead? Or, how do you think that might improve? Why are we even having these conversations? Because it is such a delicate thing to think about switching. But I think parents do need need support from the entire family instead of just having to come through like the authoritarian that we're just making these changes.
So as a dietitian, would it be better to bring the whole family in? And then again, using your other skill of being a motivational interviewer, you draw out what their goals are. And so you come in here, you swing by McDonald's. Maybe we want they also have salads there. Would you like to switch to a salad? Or have you considered if meal preparation would be an option, would you be willing to do that for the entire week so that you overcome this? Are those some of the things that you would move forward with? Or like how can we can't impart our will on them, but we can draw out their desires and be, I think you said, the guide. So you desire to be more slender or to be more fit. Here's some options you have. Option A, B, C. Which would work best for your family for our first step?
Mm-hmm. Right, and I think that we really do want to go back to providers being encouraged to take the time to build the why of change, whether it's with the caregiver and the youth together. I've done other work where with adolescents, inviting them just to talk to me by themselves and really have that freedom to express what their hopes are about their wellness and their future and their fitness in relation to their weight. And then ask permission if you can share that back with their caregiver and have the whole family working together to support that. But your point on the menu of options is really key. Again, this is where we as providers have that so much clinical knowledge and a lot of knowledge of resources and things in the community that can be positive, that we can kind of tailor. We're able to move through and say, yes, okay, I'm hearing lots of things about this person's lifestyle and this family's approach to things, that this could work, but that definitely wouldn't be an avenue. So already, I think without saying a lot, providers are doing a lot when they tailor a menu of options and then share it back with the family to allow them that autonomy to start making choices.
So there's for all these conditions, whether there's struggling with obesity or other eating disorders or even addictive behaviors, there's moments of clarity. There's moments in everybody's life where they realize, I've got to make a change. They don't necessarily happen when they're sitting in the clinician's office. How can we maximize that moment? And it might be where they're on vacation and they don't want to take their shirt off around the pool. How can we leverage those moments to help them? Because the amount of information is out there. We know what to do. They know what to do for the most part. How can we help these changes take place, even if they're not present, if we're not present with them? When that moment arrives, like, man, I've got to make that change that I talked to her about.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's I think two pieces to highlight here. The first piece would be creating that non-judgmental clinical environment that an individual or a family can come and speak and get ideas and be open to hearing them and just talk it out a bit about how that might look if they decided to do it. Another one would be when we talk about the why of change, often we talk about like, okay, well, you have these reasons and these desires, but another key piece of change is their ability or their confidence to make the change. And so we as providers can be affirming. When we notice the strength that our patients, our families, that they bring in. I mean, parents are really dedicated. They're making these appointments. They're doing so much. They're persevering for a lot of things. And when we can affirm the fact that there are strengths that these families bring into the room, maybe perhaps completely unrelated to whatever we're talking about with weight or changing nutrition. Those are things that families can draw upon in those moments where they're thinking, okay, I'm out of the office, I'm in the real world, but I'm dedicated. I'm somebody who perseveres. I can listen to a little bit of nagging in the back seat if there's applesauce in the container instead of French fries, because I know that in the long run, these things will be helpful and important.
And there's a point where the parents do have, we have no real control over people, but the parents do have control over, especially when their kids are younger. Once you create someone who's used to getting their way, it's hard to change that behavior. It's much more difficult. So it sounds to me like we can make an impact as clinicians, but this is a societal issue that we need to support, probably legislation that puts physical education back into school and having that something that we don't have it at every school anymore. And also possibly more nutrition classes in schools, and just, it's not a matter of information as much as opportunity to really see the results of it. I remember when I was in school, everybody had PE. Everybody had to do PT every day in grammar school, in junior high and high school. And that's gone away. So it's not just about exercise. So it is about nutrition. It is about choices and understanding the ramifications of those choices too.
Well, if we could start to make healthy behaviors the default, move back maybe to some like you're mentioning, or improving some of the options, for example, that are available for some of the lunching programs or the breakfast programs. And so that, children, if they're hungry, they will eat what is available. And so if we could work in, again, like you're saying, more societal impacts, that could be very powerful. It would also relieve some stress on parents that are really working to do such great things for their families in so many different realms.
So can you share a success story that you've experienced, and what are some of the factors that you've had that took place in there where you were able to help someone with childhood obesity? And childhood obesity is not necessarily what you think of somebody morbidly obese. It's being overweight, just what we've become so accustomed to. So what's been a success story that you can relate to our audience?
I was working with a youth, an adolescent, and she was trying to figure out some ways to get some more activity into her life. And she lived somewhere, she lived in Michigan where winters were very cold. And so going outside was not going to be an option for her. She was inspired by this idea that perhaps she could do some exercise videos, but she didn't have the equipment to do this. She didn't have a DVD player. So that dates me a little bit. She was saying that she realized, in the past, I really wanted this device, and I didn't have the money for it. But I was able to rally all of my family members for my birthday, and I asked all of them to contribute to me to purchase this larger purchase. And she was really feeling inspired because she was like, wait a minute, I've already been able to raise money for something that I really wanted. And so she was moving that forward. Again, a past success. She was feeling confident in her ability. And then she was able to get, for her next birthday, a way to play those exercise videos. And she was so proud of herself and excited to engage in this regular physical activity at a time normally in a season that she wasn't able to. And so that was just such a powerful way to see her take ownership of her health and know that she had a lot of impact on her life.
And one victory leads to another victory. You have to have the first victory before you have the second victory. And if the only victory is losing 60 pounds, well, that's too big of a task. If we say, cut out, sweet tea. That's not cutting out everything. Just cut out sweet tea, or cut out sodas. See what happens there. Just that one thing. Eat whatever else you want, but cut out sodas. Hey, I lost 5 pounds in a month by just doing that. Then after the first victory, they realize they can move on to this. And instead of always having a candy bar when there's a sugar, feel sugar low, have an apple. And then again, those little victories along the way. If you have that candy bar every day, well, maybe we'll just have an apple every day at that point. Leave everything else as it is, and then slowly make those changes. And once you see the changes, you realize, I can do more. And for the most part, with this epidemic, it's really hard to have victories with everybody. We're not going to get wins on every one of our patients. The ones we do have wins with, it's profound. It's always worth it for those, even if it's 1 in 20. And frankly, it probably is 1 in 20, which is pretty sad. So I think what we really need to commit ourselves to, and you and I have had these conversations about having maybe even a more global campaign with Parker University to combat childhood obesity. It's providing the resources for the parents, for the children, for the practitioners. Like you're educating a whole army of clinical nutritionists. And our goal is to launch them out into the world to share this information, to be active with school boards, to be active and lobbying and to active with patient care so that we can make an impact in people's lives. And with this, and that's, so your job right now is, if you treat a patient, I'll go back, if you treat a patient, you're treating a patient. If you do 10 a day, it's pretty important, 50 a week. But if you train an army of people in clinical nutrition, you can reach tens of thousands of people. And eventually we get a synergy out there where we start making an impact, pushing back this tidal wave of not just childhood obesity, but obesity of our entire nation and Western world. So we don't have all the answers here, and this is something we're working for and we're working towards, and I applaud you for what you're doing with our program. And it is a major problem, and we're here to have discussions about how we can combat it.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. It is so exciting to think about all of the different fields and clinicians and specialties that Parker brings together, because I think that that's what it's going to take. It's going to take a multidisciplinary approach. Well,
you've got quite a few new people signing up starting this fall in your program, so I'm excited about that. And thank you for joining us today. You've been listening to Dr. Kathryn Hartlieb, and this is Clinical Rounds.
Thanks for watching another episode of Parker Success Academy Clinical Rounds with Dr. William E. Morgan.